all for coming. I definitely appreciate you all taking the time to come and join us. I know your schedules are all pretty crazy these days, so we greatly appreciate you taking time to chat with us today. Again, I'm Peter Bacon. I have the certification unit here over in Concord, and we have 6 staff working in our unit currently besides myself, 5 full-timers and 1 part-timer. And Jay is here with me, so I'll let him introduce himself.
Hi, I'm Jay Kurinskas. I'm a licensing and evaluation coordinator, and I work for Peter.
All right. So, and before we get started, things too deep, I just want to take a minute to thank you all for what your efforts have been over the last couple of years here. I know it's been a pretty bumpy road for all of you working out there, putting in a huge effort just to keep people safe, keep yourself safe, keep your family safe, and your efforts definitely do not go unnoticed. My staff and I I've talked to most of you probably over the last couple of years, some of you on numerous occasions, and we know that it's been a huge undertaking to just do your regular job, much less having to cover shifts like all of you are doing on a pretty regular basis, and get some rest in between. So it's been a real challenge, for everyone out there. So, we greatly appreciate it. And for our unit specifically, I mean, we know that, when COVID first popped up, we had to change our procedure like on the same day. So, and that impacted every single one of you out there. And you folks had to kind of jump into a whole new process of getting stuff emailed to us or sent through your database, or however that worked for your unit. But, all of you really jumped in and made that happen. And your efforts are really appreciated, because we couldn't have done it without you all helping and jumping in together. So based on that, we'll go ahead and jump in and get started here. And this is our first training via Zoom, so I apologize now for any technical difficulties that we may have, because you just never know how things are going to go here. We're so used to doing these in person over the last umpteen years here. This is a very unique process, but this was a nice opportunity, we think, that Marissa was able to set up for us. So we'll go ahead and jump in. We hope to be done-ish somewhere around 2:30, somewhere in there as far as the PowerPoint stuff goes, and then allow some time for questions. But again, if you have questions during the presentation, send those into the Q&A piece, and we'll be monitoring that and stopping throughout. There'll be PowerPoint slides in here with us just say questions on them. So we're going to stop and try to answer questions as we go, so it's specific to kind of what's being talked about at that point. So let's go ahead and get started. And if I can just get here we go. All right. So first, why do we need certification? Why do we come out every year to do your inspections? How does the whole process kind of fall together? So I'll just go over some of the highlights here. We're actually required from state law to be able to do this. So there's a place in RSA 126A indicates in part again that the commissioner will adopt rules, and it says to quote, govern the establishment and operation of community living facilities. The certification of community living facilities shall be based on these rules. So again, the state makes rules to apply to the certification pieces that we look at when we're out there. Also indicates that quote, certifications shall be subject to periodic review and renewal by the commissioner. So this is the RSA that allows us to set up the certification process for our residential facilities and homes. There's a separate RSA, part of RSA 171A talks about the commissioner shall designate one area agency per region, and that this area agency shall be responsible for providing programs and services, including quote, day services. So again, this law goes on to indicate that the commissioner shall quote, adopt rules establishing standards for the provision of day services. So this is where those pieces kind of come together. This is the statutory authority that we have to go in and do the inspections for your residential homes and facilities and your certified day programs. All right, so the way certification works, the state of New Hampshire and Bureau of Developmental Services primarily receives Medicaid reimbursement through the Medicaid waiver program through HCBC and CCW. So there's some waiver programs that allow that Medicaid money to come in to allow people to be supported, in their homes, in day programs, et cetera. BDS contracts in with the area agencies. One of the 10 area agencies out there, they all are contracted and enrolled Medicaid providers. And Medicaid being a publicly funded program, which requires state oversight, quote, to protect the health, safety, and welfare of the individuals served. So that's our primary responsibility out there, is again to look at health and safety issues in the homes and day programs that we support. This came into the challenge a little bit when COVID first started, obviously, because we kind of backed out there a few months to make sure that we were doing the right thing, keep people safe, and then working through Medicaid, we were informed that we really need to be able to get out there and continue to provide this oversight. So that's what got us back into the field again. All right, so just a quick overview of the rules that we currently enforce when we're out in the field. HEM 310, it rights of persons receiving developmental services or acquired brain disorder services in the community. HEM 503, eligibility in the process of providing services. So all the service agreement and service provision pieces are in that rule. HEM 506, staff qualifications and staff development requirements for developmental service agencies. HEM 507 for CPS. HEM 1001, the primary certification role, and the one we'll talk the most about today, is certification standards for community residences. HEM 1201, healthcare coordination and the administration of medications. And then there is also an HEP 14. This is community residence at the residential care and supported residential care level. And this is only applicable if you have homes that have 4 or more individuals. So these homes are all certified initially, but they're also licensed. So it's a little bit different process, some additional pieces. They look the same as far as the cert piece goes, but we do the same review in either location, but there are 814 rules specific that we look at when we go out in addition to those situations. Any questions on just a little bit of an overview there, kind of how the system is set up?
No questions have come through yet, Peter.
Okay, great.
And as a reminder to participants, please, if you have any questions, just put them in the Q&A. You don't have to wait till there's a question slide. You can put them in as we go, and they will just be addressed all at once.
Yeah, definitely. As you come along, like I said, just ask questions as we go, and we'll definitely stop, numerous times throughout the presentation here so that you have a chance to get a timely answer before we get too far down the road here.
Oh, Peter, we have a quick question. So
Okay.
It's just from Sandy Weber, and it's just asking how long we have been doing this, both you and I.
I've been here since 2016. No, 2006. So tomorrow, actually, Jay, is my 16th anniversary here. So.
Wow, congratulations.
Before that, I was with the area agency up in the Lakes region. I was there for almost 18 years.
That's amazing. That's amazing.
Long time. Getting old, Jay.
Yeah, I know the feeling. So I've been doing it 22 years here at the state, and I'll stop there because it's embarrassing. And I think that's the only question for now, Peter. Everyone's saying happy anniversary, though.
Not quite there yet. I'm almost there. One day. Just gonna make it till tomorrow. All right. Let's keep going here then. Okay, that spins around nicely. Let's see if we can go beyond it. There we go. So the types of certifications that we have. So we certify 1 to 3 person homes. And this is with or without a CPS slot. And this is by far the majority of the homes that we have out there. We have a little over 1,200 homes that are certified at this point. Probably 95, 96% of them are all 1 to 3 person homes. We do have 4 more person homes out there. The biggest one we have is probably 10 beds on the DD and ABD side of our world. We do mental health homes also, which we won't talk about here today, but they have more licensed facilities than this side does. And then we do, again, standalone CPS programs. There are 6 categories of reviews that we're going to talk about this afternoon. So I'll go over these in detail as we go further in the presentation. So we do emergency certifications, which I think most of you have used on probably one occasion or another. We've seen, a little bit of jump in those throughout COVID. We have the temporary initial reviews. We have an annual/renewal review. There are biennial reviews, which is specific to CPS only. That was taken out of 1001 at the last rewrite. We have abbreviated reviews, and then we have the skip review process. So again, we're going to go all through those a little more detail as we move along here, so you can ask questions if you have specific questions around those pieces. All right, so emergency certifications. Again, this is for true emergencies only. It's going to be a situation where the person moved out of their home suddenly. They couldn't get a life safety for the new location they're going to, and you need to have a home for this person today. And this allows you to certify the home immediately in those situations. But again, it's got to be a true emergency, and the application that you'll look at will go through those pieces, and it'll kind of make you describe and further into that piece what that is about. Certificates for these programs can be backdated up to 7 days. So this is different from any of our other categories that we have for certification. It's the only one that the rules allow us to backdate up to 7 days. Because all we want you to do in an emergency, you've got to find a home for the person, you've got to get them settled, make sure they have their meds, make sure the provider's trained or the staff are trained. There's a lot of moving pieces. So this allows you a 7-day period to get that application back to us. So if this happens on a Friday night type of thing, they tend to happen more often than not, sadly. This gives you until the following Friday to get this to us. So you get like a full 7 days to get this application back into our hands. No life safety report is required for an emergency certification. In fact, if you have an emergency certification, you cannot use a life safety, pass or fail. And we'll mention that here in a minute. Yeah, so if a life safety has already been done for the home, you're no longer eligible for the emergency certification, regardless if it's passed or failed. So again, make sure that you know what you're looking at when you go in there. We're going to talk more about the preparation pieces as we go along here, because there's some things that we've seen over the last several years that we want to talk about, make sure people are aware of in regard to this process. Again, if it's been done, no longer eligible. I've got people that have had a life safety come out, they failed, and then they apply for an emergency. And I can give at that point, because now the fire department's already aware that this home has these issues and we cannot pass it. So what I will tell you is that there are situations, and there are fire departments out there, if you get to know them and work with them, there are some that will allow like a contingency service agreement, a life safety for like a short term. They'll give you like 30 days, 45 days, whatever, to get these certain things passed, but they'll let the person live there in the meantime. So if you have something like that and they'll write that on a life safety, we can open you as a regular home at that point. You don't need the emergency cert if the fire department gives you the okay to work on this thing over time. Because obviously during COVID, we're having trouble getting people to come out, and the electricians can't get out there in a timely manner because they're so busy. Getting smoke detectors and windows installed has been a problem recently because of supply and demand. So we're seeing a lot of this kind of thing play out, but the fire departments are, a lot of situations working with the agency to take care of those issues. Emergency certifications, again, are issued for 45 days. So from the day that home opens, there'll be a 45-day period. And once that 45 days comes and ends, the certificate is shut off in the computer automatically. I can't continue it past that day. So you need to make sure you tell us by day 45 what the plan is. The 45-day emergency does have an option for a one-time emergency extension. So if you can get us another emergency application back to us, by day 43, 44, even on day 45 to say, we need another emergency extension because the electrician's not going to be here for another 2 weeks, something like that, then that is reasonable, and we can give you another 45-day emergency on top of that. They can be issued in an already certified home also. So if you have a home that is certified currently for 1 bed or for 2 beds, you can do an emergency in that situation if need be for a 3rd bed, or a 2nd or 3rd bed, depending on how many beds you've got to begin with. You cannot do this if you have a 3-bed home. You can't do a 4th bed under an emergency for any situation, because then you need a license regardless to open that 4th bed. So 3 beds would be the limit, but we do have emergencies that happen, and we have a provider, that has another bedroom in our house. It's got a big enough window. It's got smoke detectors. It meets the basic requirements. So this allows you to get that piece taken care of and get them in there. So something to keep in mind if you have homes that are out there, and providers to have, room available to do this on at least a short time basis to, give you another option to get a person to a safe environment. All right, so the emergency cert application, it's a 1-page document, and we have those available online for people to look at. I think most of you have probably seen them pretty regularly. Again, the application includes the following. So we need the address of the home where the person is now going to be staying. We need to have the home provider or the home manager name, depending whether or not it's a EFC home or a staffed environment. We need the vendor agency and that contact person with their information. We have the area agency and the contact person with their information. We need to know the current beds in the home, if you have any beds there now. If it's strictly a emergency coming online that is not certified at all, you're going to always put 0 current and then whatever you're requesting. You cannot request more beds or CPS slots than people going there for an emergency. We've had a few over the past year where I'll get the emergency app in. It'll request 2 beds, but there's only 1 individual on the application. If there's only 1 individual going into that home, I can only give you 1 emergency bed that day. You can't get both beds unless you have 2 individuals going into the same home. And again, this applies to both the beds and the CPS slots. So you can ask for both of those on the emergency app. There's a box at the bottom third of the form. It puts the individual's name and again, the reason for that emergency, the reason that you're doing this versus a typical certification. Remember that the application for the emergencies must be signed by the area agency and it should be signed by either the executive director or their designee, depending on who's taking the responsibility for it on that day. And then it's going to come to our office with a floor plan. So make sure you have a floor plan drawn out when you submit the emergency app to the area agency so they get the full package. And then this has come up, boy, 4 or 5 times in the past year for whatever reason. Confirm if you're a vendor, confirm with the area agency who's going to submit that approved application to our office. Because we've had a handful of situations over the past year where the area agency sends it back to the vendor. So the vendor thinks that the area agency already submitted it though. And the area agency thinks that the vendor is going to submit it when they get it. And we find out 3 months down the road that no one ever submitted it. So then we have to go through a bunch of hoops on this end to try to figure out how to make that work, because obviously people were in the home. You've been paying a home provider and we need to figure out how to make this work. But definitely work with the agencies that you're doing these things with and make sure you all are on the same page as far as submission to this office, because again, that can cause some building problems, obviously, that none of you want to get into. All right, so temporary certifications. If you send us a complete application, we can open your home the same day. So there's no delay for opening a community residence. If I get 1 application tonight with an approved life safety, it comes in at 10 o'clock at night, I can still open you today. It doesn't have to be by the close of business, but it's got to be that same day. It needs to be emailed to us, prior to midnight. We'll always open you that day. Again, it's going to come with an approved life safety within the past 90 days. So make sure you keep an eye on those, because we've had some that they'll get the life safety down, but the person is not quite ready to go in there yet. And then there's a delay for one reason or another. And suddenly now you're 100 days out from the life safety date. You submit the packet to us and I can't certify it because the life safety now is too old. In 90 days, it's a hard date. So if it gets to day 90, I had to turn one away for 92 days a little bit ago, because and if 91's okay, the 92 should be okay, right? So we tried to, keep it to what the rule says. It's black and white, that's 90 days. So just keep an eye on those dates as you're getting homes ready to be opened. Another thing I should go back on here. One thing to think about when you're doing the life safeties is look at what the fire department's approving versus what you need for the home. Because we had a bunch of them where the fire department signs off for 3 beds or 2 beds, and then the agency only asks for 1 because that's all they need today. But if you think there's going to be someone else moving in there in the next several months, you should ask for the 2nd or 3rd bed, whether the fire department gave you, so that you have that bed available. If you have no intention of filling that bed, then definitely go with whatever you need for the individuals that will be living there. So just remember to look at those numbers, because we'll typically we'll check back with you when I get those to see, this is 2 beds and you only requested 1. Are you sure you want 1 before I process it? Again, directions to the home and the CPS site, not as important as it was, years ago before GPS, but we have over the past couple of years seen an increase in new developments. And there's places sometimes that we can't find because they're not on a map anywhere. So we have to call the agency and kind of help them walk us through it, because we're not sure where this place sits because they haven't been uploaded to the sites that we use for our GPS. Waiver applications if applicable. So if the home provider or something else in the home needs a waiver, make sure you send at least that waiver application to us with the regular application for cert. If you have the approval already, then definitely submit that with it. But if waivers are applicable, send something with that so that we know that there's a waiver involved. So yeah, your temporary certificate will be issued for 90 days from the day you open. And you get a site review somewhere around that 90-day mark. It depends on the surveyor and kind of where they are with scheduling. It depends on the time of the year. Our reviews from April to May, somewhere in there, going through October and early December. Our reviews in the summer are double what they are during the winter months. So it's really we try to catch up during the winter months and then fall behind again in the spring and the summer. So it's kind of like a rhythm, the way those things work. So just going to keep an eye on the dates there and know kind of when we'll be coming out. The certification application, pretty straightforward. Those of you who've been around for any period of time have seen this thing and used it, pretty regularly. So again, we need the physical address on top. The cert number for, again, a new home is going to be nothing for the time being. If it's a new home, you're going to check off new. We'll talk about some other things you can use the application for in a few minutes, but for this piece, just putting these pieces in here. Mailing address, if that is different for some reason, the requested start date, again, for a regular certification, the start date is going to be the day that we get this, or it's going to be a day in the future. We can't backdate these at all. You're going to request the number of slots you have currently. So if it's new home, the current number is going to be 0 and 0. There's no change to that at all because it's new environment. If it's new home or as a routine home, it's already online, you're going to put in whatever you have for CPS and residential beds. Number of requests is going to be what you want to open today for the new home. Do you want 1 bed, 2 bed, whatever the case may be, and the number of CPS slots. You're going to check off a staffed residence or a family residence, depending on what situation you're looking at. And then what's the home going to be certified for? Is it going to be residential? Is it just going to be CPS, or is it going to be a combination of both? Every agency does it a little bit differently as to where they build their CPS from. So just make sure that those boxes are checked off. Then next we have the contact information. So we want to know who the contact is for the site visit, their name, email, and the phone number, so we can reach them when the time comes to get that scheduled. Questions down below, again, we want the provider name, provider phone number. And then there's just some yes and no questions. We want to know if the home is currently licensed. And this would include foster care. So if this home that you're opening has a foster care license, we need to know that because those individuals count as part of your life safety report that you'd need for us. So we have to make sure that they're included. Is the home under emergency certification? If you're coming from an emergency and going to a temp, now that you have your life safety, you would check off yes, but otherwise it's always going to be a no. Then there's a couple of CPS questions. Is the individual at the CPS program more than 1 hour a day? Yes or no? If it's their home, you're going to check off yes, because again, they are there more than an hour. But if it's a centralized site, we want to know if they're there for an hour or more, because that will be dictate whether or not you're going to be doing fire drills at that location. And then if the CPS located at a currently certified community residence. So depending on what you're doing, that could be a yes or a no. Okay. So the back page of the application is pretty straightforward also. We're going to need the individual's name, their date of birth. Just check the date of birth when you put it in there. I've had several people in the past couple of months here who were born in the fall of this coming year or back in the early 1900s. So just make sure those numbers match so it's actually the real date. We want to know who they're served by. Is it developmental services? Is it an ABD funding, or behavior health won't affect or impact most of you folks? We need to know the number of hours of supervision required by their service agreement. And you can put down there the day or the week. We put it in our database by the week, just because we have some folks that have more freedom as far as supervision goes on the weekends than they do during the week type of thing. So the hours are, they do vary, but we want to know kind of what it is per week at the end of the day. So if you can do that, that would be perfect. CPS provider, you're just going to put down the agency, or if it's the home, it's going to put down, home provider. That would work. We're asking if this person has an approved behavior plan. And then we want to know whether or not they self-administer their medications. So we need that on every person getting services they under 1001. Down below that, we need to know the vendor agency information and the area agency information. So we just need the name, mailing address, phone number, contact name, and contact email. And then further below that, it's list all non-family members receiving services. So what we're looking for here is folks that are there like under PDMS. That's probably the biggest one we see. So if that's the situation, we have two people living there, one is getting, straight 1001 residential funding, the other person's getting funding through PDMS. So if that's the case, the 1001 person is going to go on top of that page there. But down here is where you're going to put the PDMS individual. So he's going to put down their name, their date of birth, and then just what their funding source is. We have some folks out there that get other funding. We have some, a few private pay folks in a few locations. There's not that many of them, but we do, need to know who's there because again, they're counted on the life safety. When we do our review, we don't look at documentation for those individuals. So anyone that falls into that category down below for the other individuals not noted above, we don't look at their stuff at all. All the thing we're going to look at when we're there in regard to that individual or individuals is their bedroom. We need to make sure that their bedroom is as safe as the other bedroom in the house as far as smoke detectors and exit, et cetera. Just a few questions down below. Was there a current life safety report attached? Again, for a residential program, we would need that obviously. And is it done within the past 90 days? It'll ask if there's any waivers required for the home. And then it just asks if there's any provider or adult family member, excluding the individual, been convicted of a felony, misdemeanor, or had a substantiated report of abuse, neglect, or exploitation. So basically what we're looking to see if there's going to be any waivers needed for the situation. So you would check off yes and no there. The last statement here is important. It says at the bottom of the page, I swear or affirm that the information provided on the application is accurate to the best of my knowledge and belief. I believe the resident/community participation services program is in full compliance with the statutes and regulations governing these services. I understand that providing false information shall be grounds for denial, suspension, or revocation of that certification. And then you just sign at the bottom, put down title and the date, and that is it. So you would submit that to us with a life safety, and again, we'd be able to open the home or the day program for that matter that day. So just a couple other things that the application is used for. Again, we talked about how to use it for a new certification, but it's used for a lot of other changes that we need to be kept aware of because our data in our system gets used for billing and for BDS information that they need to have. So it's important that the information here be accurate. So again, besides opening a home, you're going to be using it for renewal requests. So, those are going to be due 60 days prior to expiration. So those of you who have homes expiring at the end of May, we should be getting those today or tomorrow. Let's see, you can add or remove a bed or a CPS slot with this document. You can add or remove an individual from the home or the CPS slot. So if there's people that moved in there, people that have moved out, just let us know that via the application so we can make sure that they land in the right place in the database. Changing the level of supervision. So if the person's gone from 20 division, they're going to have an hour per day of unsupervised time. We need to know that so we can include that in our data. And then if you change any of the contact information, you have situations where the home provider's changed, the agency person may have changed, there may be a difference in phone numbers, things like that. The application can be used for any of those things. Right, and the life safety report. So reasons to obtain a new life safety report. Again, you're going to use one to open the home or the CPS site. I'm going to come back to that in just a minute. You can use it to add a bed or a CPS slot to a home. You're going to change the individual's bedroom from one bedroom to another room in the house that is not the currently certified bedroom. Then you need to do a new life safety because the fire department signed off on, say for instance, room A and room B. But now if you're going to be using room A and this other new room called room C now, we need to have the fire department come out because that's not the door or the room that they signed off on the day they came. It was not the one that they were told was the certified room. If there's a change in egress to the home, so if there's new windows, new doors put into the home, things like that would need a new life safety. And then anytime that work is completed at the home or the CPS site, that required a building permit. So if your town or city required a building permit to whatever work they're doing, regardless if it impacts the doors or windows, if it required a building permit, you still got to have another life safety completed. Now back to the top for just 1 minute though, for the opening a new home, we get life safeties, of course, all the time with open new homes. And one thing to be aware of is that you need to look at what the fire department signed off, obviously, and make sure you're good with that. But you've also got to remember that there are pieces of our rule that require things above and beyond the fire code. The biggest problem we see with this right now are smoke detectors. Our rule requires hardwired interconnected smoke detectors, one on every level of the house, including the basement and the attic, as well as one in every bedroom. If you don't have that, then you need to apply for a waiver to that piece of it. We're still going to be looking for something to be interconnected, obviously, but there's been some things the fire departments are seeing as far as battery operated or radio controlled, things like that. But it's going to be still at least one hardwired on every level in those situations. But we still require a waiver because they're not all hardwired or interconnected. We should, at this point, we shouldn't be going into homes that have, battery operated detectors throughout that don't communicate with each other. And this is something that was put into place back in 2007, Jay. That'd be,
I believe so.
Because the fire that we had in Tilton was back in 2006, and the change to smoke detectors came out shortly after that. So, when you're opening up a new home, even though the life safety is fine, make sure that you know whether or not those hardwired detectors are hardwired and are interconnected before they come out, because again, they're probably not going to notice it because that it's not really in the building code that's out there looking for. We ask for stuff above and beyond as far as the smoke detector component goes. So again, just make sure that you've done your homework, because I think, Jay, you've had this happen a few times in the past couple of weeks, I believe.
Yeah, I think 3 times actually.
And at this point, that shouldn't be happening at all at this point. Obviously, there may not be something on day one, but I think the situations you've been into, with newer staff, and then they didn't know the expectation, I believe. Would that be accurate?
Yeah, I don't think that they were even aware that it was supposed to be done.
Okay.
Well, some were.
Okay.
We'll stop there.
All right. So again, just make sure that you've done your homework as far as smoke detectors go. It's hugely important that those are up and working, and are able to just an extra notification. If there's a fire in the basement and the person on the second floor has notification when all the detectors go off at the same time, that gives them so much extra time to get out of the house and get people out. All right. So again, there's 2 life safeties that you'll see out there. There's one for community residences, and then there's a separate one for the day programs. And again, day programs only need them if you're going to be using your office for activities for more than an hour at any one time. We don't see that many of them these days because, the way the CPS rule is written, people spend the majority of their time, at least pre-COVID, out in the community. So hopefully we'll be getting back to that direction. So we don't have a whole lot of day programs out there right now with the life safety in place. All right, any questions so far? You can open that up, Jay. We'll see.
Yes, there are.
All right. Let's see if we can answer them, Jay.
So we had a couple that I answered quickly, but I just want to review them just so people know that they were asked and answered. So you had a bunch of happy anniversaries. And someone asked about 525 and if this would affect them. And I said, no, we're not involved in 525.
You're not.
And we've had several requests for the PowerPoint itself.
Okay.
So I told people, yeah, we can absolutely give them the PowerPoint. More than happy to.
Yeah. There's a way from Marissa. We don't have everyone's email address, obviously, because we didn't do the sign up here. But if Marissa has that information, she can usually send it out to you. If not, we'll figure out a way to get it to you all, though.
Yeah,
Yes,
maybe
we do
can-
have everybody's email address, so I'm happy to send that out after this is done.
And hopefully it'll also get posted to our website within Well, soon we'll say. I won't give a time frame. I don't want to lock us into that.
Fair, Jay.
So we had a question. I'm going to start with the questions in chat first because questions got dropped in the chat and I just don't want to forget about those. So Cindy had a question about if a fire department gives you a conditional life safety due to the smoke detectors not being okay, they are connected, but they still need an electrician, I believe. It's a little bit garbled, I think, just for typing it in here. But if you open the house, for an initial review, would we need to self-report that the smoke detectors were not in compliance at the time of the opening? So basically, if the smoke detectors aren't in compliance, but the fire department has given them a conditional approval, do they need to self-report that?
I'm not thinking so. I think if there's a plan in place and that, we don't want to beat people up obviously about things that they're working on. So I think that's fine. Just give us an update when we get there and tell us that that's going on. Because we're going to see the life safety. When we open the home, we'll see that that's written on the life safety, and we'll just kind of flag it here so that we know that, 30, 60 days, whatever the case is, that they're going to come back out, that we get a new one at that point showing that they went back out and they, signed off now saying everything is good to go. We're really not all about deficiency, even though some people believe that to be true. We'd rather have people find a problem with that at all.
Okay. And then we had a question on the back page of the application where it asks for the area agency contact information. If there's an independent case manager, who would go in for the area agency contact? And I believe it would still be the area agency contact, correct?
Yeah. Usually if you say you have a separate, separate service coordinator that's working on that individual, typically what we see in those situations is the QI or QA person for that agency, because they tend to be the one that gets the certificate and make sure that it gets to the right place. So I would definitely list somebody from the area agency.
Okay. And then we had a couple questions from an anonymous attendee. I would also be one of those people, I bet you. So it says the area agencies also require additional information in order to process an emergencies application request. It's not quite a question, but I think what they're trying to get at is like the Moore Center and other area agencies who require more than the average bear, say, for an emergency application request. Can you speak a little to that, Peter?
Yeah, this came up, before pre-COVID. I go to like service coordination supervisor meetings and CS&I meetings, and discussions came up around the emergency cert process, because basically we're taking a piece of paper signed by the area agency saying that everything is good, and we don't have any documentation beyond that application. So I know that several of the agencies developed like a checklist to see what was in place early on, and if they check this and check this type of thing, so that the area agencies have something to either have for themselves or to submit with the application in most cases, to show that, we know this information is accurate and here's what the vendor agency gave us as far as the checklist goes, because they check for a variety of different things. So they, it's not required by rule, but that's something that we have talked to those groups about, to make sure that there's one more piece of, security there, because, it's really important that people get out there and kind of see the situation and not just kind of sign off on it blindly. So
Absolutely.
But we're not looking, if we have an application, this emergency app and the floor plan, it's going online regardless, because we don't look for those other pieces. If they're there, that's great. If not, we don't go looking for them.
Okay. Then we've got one, you may have recently addressed this, but I'll run it off anyway. It says, if you have a life safety that expires after 90 days, can you open it as an emergency certification at that point? So basically, if you have an expired life safety, can you make it an emergency instead?
Yeah, if you've got that 90-day life safety and it gets to be day 95, and now the person's ready to move in, but the fire department can't get back out there until next week, then do an emergency at that point, because again, it's emergency to get them certified. The fire department can't go out until next week or whatever. So if
they didn't fail the life safety,
right? As long as it wasn't failed, they've been out, they approved it, but you didn't use it in the time that we allotted. There's been a couple of situations where the fire department, you can take it back to them and they'll just redate it or something, but most of them want to go back out because, again, it's been 90 plus days. So they want to go out and take a look again to make sure things are the same way they saw them because again, they see a lot of places like we do. Trying to remember what you looked at 90 days ago can be a challenge. So most of them do want to actually come back out. So yeah, as long as they passed it, it expired, you just use the emergency to get it back open if they can't get out there right away. Just so you don't, because we don't want you to lose billing days, obviously, waiting for the fire department to come back out, even though you had a life safety earlier that, it just wasn't used. So that's fine.
Great. So Sandy has a question. Can you certify a bed out of state just over the border, for instance, on an emergency cert? But she complicates it right at the end there. It was so easy before that.
Yeah, I mean, what we tell people is if there's a in-state agency and they need to put somebody across the border, because we have people that live in Massachusetts, a couple of them, several in Maine, there's some in Vermont. They're kind of like along the border of New Hampshire state, but yeah, they can certainly do that. As long as I would make sure that the agency is aware and that they have let the folks at BDS be aware, so that everyone's on board that this person can live across the state lines.
And they would they still use the New Hampshire life safety form, or could they utilize whatever that state wants to give them?
Yeah, they can certainly use whatever that state has, because some states are more than happy to sign off on our form. We're actually trying to work on our form now to update it to be a little more user friendly. But yeah, if that so we had states that just said, well, that's a New Hampshire form, I can't sign off on it, and I can appreciate that. But they've done their own letter in that case to show us that I inspected the home on this day. Here's how many beds I approve. As long as we have that information, that's fine.
Great. Another one from an anonymous attendee. Can you certify a hotel room?
Certain ones, yeah. What we'd be looking for, if you're going to do that, and we've done this probably a dozen times over the past 10 years or so, if a person's going to be somewhere temporarily until their home is ready, they've done an emergency cert or something. Actually, we had one do a temp, which is a little bit strange, but you can certainly do that type of thing. What we're going to be looking for, though, is that the individual has to have privacy. So it should be a big enough room that there's like a suite almost, where there's like a living room, maybe a little kitchenette area, and then the individual has a bedroom with a door. They've got to be able to have privacy, or a waiver to cover the privacy piece, because they never be able to be alone in their bedroom, because their bedroom is the living area. So as long as you can find something to fit that, in the places that we've done over the years, most hotels have been able to accommodate that pretty easily.
Okay. So I'll read it and then you can answer it. So does a new life safety need to be done if you turn a respite room into a CPS slot?
Guess I'm not sure what is being asked.
Yeah, they're not quite the same thing, right? They're equating a CPS slot with a respite bed.
Yeah.
But so, I mean, you wouldn't, if you added a let's try maybe answering it easier. If they tried to just add a CPS slot, would they need a new life safety?
No.
Okay.
No, that's not. It's only going to be for actual individuals' beds that you're going to be doing the life safety for. Yeah, because CPS slots can just be added on whenever, because there's no life safety needed. As long as it's for the people that are actually living in the home, then there's nothing more we need. There doesn't have to be like a separate bedroom or office area for that CPS program that we would have to certify separately. We're just certifying the bedroom at that point, and we're certifying for CPS in those situations. We're certifying the service. We're not so much certifying, the facility in that situation, because we're already certifying the home on the life safety. So you need nothing different for life safety.
Okay.
If that makes sense.
Yeah, I think so. So Ellen has a quick question, and she just wanted you to quickly review the talk about requirement of having a floor plan that indicates where the individual's bedroom will be and where the smoke detectors are for an emergency cert.
Sure. Yeah, the emergency applications come with a floor plan again, and it should show where the bedrooms are. If it's a multi-floor home, we need to have a page for each floor to show kind of how it flows together. It should show where the individual's bedroom sits in that house, to show, and then some arrows to show us, they go up and downstairs, how they get to the door, what's their primary exit, what's their secondary exit. And we need to see that at least there is something in that bedroom as far as a smoke detector. So those have got to be showing up to show that with any beds that you're putting online, there's something in there today on day one. It may end up being battery operated for a little bit until you can get someone out there to actually install it for those emergencies. But we want to know that there's something in there at the beginning.
Okay.
That makes sense. Are there other things you can think of, Jay, that we would look for on the floor plan at all, other than, of course, the room being labeled by whose it is, the exits, smoke detectors?
Maybe furnace location.
Sure.
you
Yep.
know, maybe that, but and maybe smoke fire extinguisher location if they want to get really detailed for us.
Sure. Yep. Yeah,
Um,
whatever you can put on there, that's great. I mean, we have some that come in with like these elaborate floor plans because they live in a complex that has all the stuff available and they can just relabel it. We have some that are hand drawn and they're fine too. So
Absolutely.
long as it covers the stuff that we need, whatever you need, we can work around it.
So Mary's got a quick question. Hi, Mary. Isn't it right that the life safety report must also be done if a new furnace or boiler is installed?
The
Not
rule isn't really
necessarily,
specific.
right?
No, the rule is not specific. I think a lot of people do them. We certainly recommend them just to make sure that everything got installed appropriately, because we've had a situation a while back where we had that happen, where someone had a new furnace installed, and they had a significant CO issue at night. Luckily, they had detectors. It picked everything up. It set off the alarms, and people were able to get out of the house, and the fire department responded and worked on I think it was one of your homes, Jay, if I recall.
I believe so.
That happened. So yeah, for that, we certainly, it's not in our current rule, but we certainly would highly recommend any kind of furnace installation be looked at by the fire department. Make sure that, it's appropriate as far as venting goes. And there's a lot of problems that can happen if the company doesn't install things properly. So, I don't think anything like that is huge. I think as far as providing for that additional layer of safety.
Yeah, I mean, I've seen two in the time I've been working at the state. I've seen two homes have really serious carbon monoxide issues after either new furnace installation or just a regular furnace maintenance. Very significant. So, yeah, be vigilant, I guess.
Yeah, always the other side of caution for anything that's safety related, because it's so easy to get caught up in so much of the bigger stuff. Sometimes we forget about something like that can have a very bad outcome if it's not handled correctly.
So Donna has a question, and I believe this might just be a slight misunderstanding maybe about something that was said. So it said, is the waiver for the non-interconnected smoke alarms for a certain time period so they can get them interconnected? So I think she's really talking about the conditional approval maybe.
Yeah. If it's going to be if they're going to be regular hardwired detectors and you're waiting to get them installed, you would just need the conditional approval from the fire department. If the plan is to go, because the way the house is set up or something, you have to go with hardwired on each level and then, a wireless detector in some of the bedrooms type of thing, then that would be something that would require a waiver, because the rule at the end of the day requires hardwired interconnected detectors. So and we've had at least, I know, one home in the past year that I've dealt with, that had that type of situation where it was a log cabin and they just weren't, it wasn't made to have wires running everywhere. So they were looking at a system that works great, but they didn't have, the whole interconnected piece as far as being hardwired. They're all interconnected. They just were not all hardwired. So they were able to get a waiver for that.
Okay. And we are just about through these. We've just got a few more. See, that's a happy anniversary. And we have a quick question about, will we be discussing lock and key? That's all you, Peter.
Yeah, we'll be touching on that for sure. I believe Lori Vachon is supposed to be with us at some point today. She's going to sit and kind of field some of those questions with us. So I haven't looked at yet to see who signed on and stuff, but she definitely was planning on sitting in on part of that to be able to help us with some of the, key and lock questions that have come up recently. We've been fielding this for like the last week or so, and we've cited a few deficiencies here and there, but overall, at least the houses I've been to so far, there's more that are good to go than aren't, type of thing. So I think we're, it's going to be a slow road to get there to everyone put together, but I think that, people are on the right track. They know what to do. They just, work on getting the pieces into place. So, but yeah, hopefully we can chat about that as we go along here once, with some time towards the end for bigger questions, and then maybe Lori can join us at that point for some Q&A stuff just around that, if that works for everyone.
Yeah, and Lori is here. She just shot a little message off into the QA, so I
Good deal. Thank you, Lori.
So we have a question: if the nurse trainer would meet people at the certified address the day of the review?
Most do, and most of the initial visits I see tend to be within the first day or so. There's no rule, so they have to be there on day one, and we require them to go and do a 5-day visit. But most of the nurses end up going on day one because they've got to get the meds set up, the med logs with the new provider or new staff. So, the majority of nurses tend to land there on day one for at least that reason.
And you know what else, Peter? I actually read that incorrectly. It says, and then the nurse trainer would med cert them at that address. So they would be med certed at the new address.
Yes. Yep. Yeah, because the med stuff is some situation or home specific. So if they're already certified for another site or another individual, then they have to become cited at that location with the new individual.
Great. And Rebecca is just indicating that, speaking from experience, that Massachusetts will use their own life safety form as they're not familiar with the New Hampshire regulations.
Okay. Yeah, and I've seen some from Vermont too, so I'm not sure what Maine does overall. But yeah, I've seen Vermont stuff on their own letterhead, and that's fine. As long as it gives us the number of beds and says that they're good to go, then that's great.
Yeah, we had that home in Billerica, and we got some letter from Billerica, right, from their fire department, said they were.
Yeah, that's right. We did.
Yeah.
Yep.
That was interesting. Charles has a question about, can you certify a room in the basement? And this is the last two. We have two last questions.
It would really depend on how it's set up. There's got to be either 2 exits via a door, maybe into the basement to go upstairs, and another door directly outside, or there's got to be a door to go up the stairs, and an egress window. Most basements can't do it because they're built into the foundation, and there's no way to do a egress door or have a window that's big enough on the side of the house without digging into the side of the property and making it bigger. So we don't see many people using basement locations unless it's, I think the main ones I've seen or they go out their window or the door and just walk out straight into the backyard because that's on a lower level. I don't think I've seen many, if any, that are on the same level of the house, though.
No, I mean, usually only walkouts are when people are in basements.
Yeah. Yep. And again, they've both got to be out of, if it's a walkout, it'll have to be out of their bedroom, because if the window's too small, they can't come in, they can't go out their bedroom door into the basement itself and then choose to go out the walkout or the stairs. They got to be able to have 2 exits from their bedroom. They can't, it's not 2 exits from the hallway, it's 2 exits from the bedroom, because if the fire's in the hallway, then they have no place to go. They can't go out the window because it's too small and there's no walkout there. So they've got to have another way out of that bedroom to get to fresh air without going into the hallway, if the hallway is where the fire is.
Okay. Well, we've had some more questions filter in really quickly, so I'll go through those.
Yeah. No, go ahead.
So this one says the nurse trainer will med cert them at a hotel or over the border. So yes, I mean, whatever the certified address is, correct?
Mm-hmm. Yes.
Okay. We're done with that one.
Yep.
Renu has a quick question about, do we need 2 handicap accessible exits for a program with an individual in a wheelchair?
Oh, I don't know if the rules don't specifically say so in black and white terms, but we certainly highly recommend it, obviously. I think it's come up a few times over the years. Do you have situations, Jay, that you can think of specifically that this has happened? Because I know it's come up before, because if there's an issue in the house and the person can't go out that door, they can only go on to the back deck and there's stairs, then how are they going to evacuate the house?
Exactly.
So that's been our concern for sure.
Fire departments will approve it without 2 handicap accessible exits, as long as there's 1 and then maybe like a safe area to evacuate to. So the area I'm thinking about was, they had a back deck, which at one time had been handicap accessible, but when they renovated the deck based on a deficiency that we wrote, and they put stairs on it, which wasn't the best, but the fire department approved it, saying that they could go there and wait for rescue. So while I don't think it's a good idea, some fire departments will go along with it.
Okay. Yeah, I mean, we if we saw something that we probably know as a concern, just to make sure that we know that they know, and you folks have discussed it on your end and have a plan so that if there was ever an issue and the person couldn't go out the main door of the house that they use, what's the plan at that point? What's your fire safety plan really at that point to get out of the house and to be in a safe location until the fire department arrives?
Okay. Sandra has a question. If a residential client moves to another home and all of her staff follow her to the new setting, do the staff have to be recertified for the new setting? I'm assuming med certified.
Yeah, I don't believe so. Because if it's going to be the same staff or the same individual, I think they're just moving to a new location. The nurse probably will want to update the med, the med certificate there to show the new address, I'm guessing at some point, but I wouldn't think staff would need anything if they are currently med trained and they're going to be currently med trained at the different address, but with the same individuals they've been giving meds to, for the past months or years or whatever.
I think they're required to recertify them because it's a new setting, but I don't think that it has to be done on day one. I believe that there's a period of time that they have if it's a current situation, just moving to a new setting. But I do think that they need to be authorized for the new setting because that's what the standard is right now. It's setting specific, not client specific.
Right. That makes sense.
It's a good question, though. That's a good question. We have a new one. What is the regulation size for a window?
What the fire code says is 5.7 square foot opening. But fire departments are allowed to approve whatever they agree with. Fire departments can certainly approve a smaller window if they felt that that was appropriate for that situation. Because even though the window may open, only 5.2 square feet or something for the opening, the fire department, when they come, as they've told us, we're not going to open the window and go in. We're going to use our axe. We're going to make the window a whole lot bigger, and that's going to be our exit. So, and when in the situations where people aren't going to go out the window anyway, they're going to need help. So, yeah, 5.7 is what the fire code says, but fire departments don't enforce it all the same. Some are very specific. If it's 5.6, they won't sign it. But others, if it's 3.4 or something, that they'll still approve it because they know that they can still get in an emergency. So there's a lot of variation, and the rule doesn't specify a window size. So if the fire department signs off on the windows, regardless of the size, then that's acceptable by us.
Yeah. And the anonymous attendee noted the 44 inches from the floor, but that is true. It's absolutely true, but that can be alleviated. Some fire departments will allow the provider to install a step at the window to make it less than 44 inches. So not always applicable, but a good point, a really good point.
Yeah.
And then the anonymous attendee is, I think, agreeing that the fact that the person needs to be authorized at the new setting and they have to add the new settings address to the med cert, it looks like.
Sure.
Per se.
Yep, that makes sense.
And that's it. Those are the questions right now.
All right. Yay. All right. So let's see what we have next here. Get this off of here. All right. So preparing for a certification review. I guess this is very different from the way we were doing it pre-COVID. Pre-COVID, you go through your books, get everything set up, and send us the application, and then we'd show up and spend 2, 3, 4 hours with you while you sat there watching us read a lot of times. So it wasn't all that exciting. So if anything positive for us that came out of COVID, this was the way that we're doing our cert reviews now. Has definitely been a positive change for us and for the agencies that we go out to. From what I've seen, it's a better use of everyone's time. Certainly, we go to these reviews in the past, and we have, we're sitting there reading for the entire time. The agency rep is there with us for the entire time. The home provider took a full day off to be with us for the entire time. Now we're, in and out of there within 15, 20 minutes, half an hour at the most. So they're very, different as far as that piece goes. We still look at the same stuff overall, but it's being looked at in a different manner. And that seems to be more efficient for everyone involved. So as far as preparing for reviews now, typically you're going to have 1 to 2 months to prepare for all your cert reviews. And preparation should include the following. So you want to review the digital record submission policy to see what documents need to be gathered and submitted electronically to the surveyor on or before the agreed upon date. So if, say a few months ago, you agree that you're going to, do the review on, March 31st, and you're going to have the, documents to the surveyor that morning by 9. That would be the expectation, is that you get it to them that day by 9, so they can review what they can before they go out. So if you need extra time to, get the documents to us, something's come up that morning, just, give the surveyor a call, shoot them an email or something, and just kind of give them an update, just so they're not, kind of sitting there waiting for something that may not be able to get to us for a while. Because again, we know that, certification reviews are only a small part of what all of you do every day. So I know you folks have 1,000 things going on. So we want to make sure we work with you and, do what we can, but just, keep folks in the loop when things are changing. Review the current certification tool we're using to see what the survey will be looking for on that date for the site walkthrough portion. All initial and annual reviews require a site walkthrough. So again, the first time we come out, and then again at the annual for the end of the first year, and then every time you have an annual after that, we're going to come out and do a walkthrough. Abbreviated reviews and skip reviews will typically not require a walkthrough. The specifics of those will be discussed here in a couple of minutes. All right, so abbreviated reviews. Let's see if I get this thing off my screen here. There we go. So abbreviated reviews. Abbreviated review can only be earned if the home had 1 to 3 deficiencies at their last annual inspection. So, say over, a year ago, you opened a home for the first time, you had a regular 90-day review. End of the first year comes, the surveyor does their first annual inspection out there, and you have 2 deficiencies. If that's the case, then the following year, we're going to do an abbreviated review with you, because you will not have an on-site that year because of your annual review and the fact that you only had 2 deficiencies. So we try to, reward people a little bit by, having smaller numbers and taking care of things. And, because it gives us, some knowledge that you folks know what you're doing, and we can trust you to take care of the stuff when we're not there. We don't feel the need to go and do a walkthrough every year if you're showing us that you're, attentive to everything that goes on. Because again, we're there one day out of the year, and you folks are in there a lot more than we are. So if you can show us that that's going on, that's really helpful. Preparation for the abbreviated review is very similar to the annual inspection, as you need to submit the same documents to the surveyor, again, by the date agreed upon. So the same, whatever you submit for the initial, for the annual, for the renewals, for abbreviated, they're all going to be the same documents. That piece is not going to change. The only difference between an annual and abbreviated is that site visits will not typically happen during an abbreviated. There are times when it will, and we'll probably treat it more like an annual. Is that, say you had 2 deficiencies, but they were life safety related, like the furnace hadn't been inspected possibly, there was a blocked exit, things like that. There's things that, that we feel we need to go back out and take a look at this year to ensure that they're, we're addressed, and 2 are still working as required. Then we may have to come out and do the walkthrough in those situations. But for the most part, we don't tend to have to go out for abbreviateds. Any licensed homes and standalone CPS programs not eligible at this point for abbreviated reviews. Okay, so skip reviews. The skip review will be earned if the home has 0 deficiencies at their last annual inspection. So you say you had your first, temporary initial review at around day 90. Regardless of the performance there, we come out again at the end of that first year. We do a full annual inspection at that point with the on-site. If you had no deficiencies at all at that review, and then the following year, you're going to get a letter from me to an email saying that, because of your review results this year, having no deficiencies, you've earned a skip for this coming year. And it'll be a list of a few things you got to submit to me by a certain date. Typically, you get those 6 weeks prior to the paperwork being due. And then we mail you a certificate. We don't come out typically and do reviews or do on-site inspections for any of the skips. If there was something significant enough that we would have to do a site review, typically that would have ended up in abbreviated because it would have been cited somewhere if it was a significant life safety issue. Yeah, if a home does earn a skip review, the agency will receive an email from me about 45 days before the cert expires, which will include a cover letter along with several documents referred to in the cover letter explaining what needs to be done and by what date. So for those of you who had annual inspections, what month I'm working off now, maybe I think it's May. Yeah, it's May actually. Those of you who had annual inspections last May for certs that expire on May 31st, you'll get those letters this week, because on the 1st of April, those letters all go out. So you'll get email from me that morning for your home to say that your home had annual inspection last year, had 0 deficiencies, you're eligible for a skip, and here's what I need by the and by what date. Typically, it's always the middle of the month that you expire. So again, these will go out on April 1st. They'll be due right around May 15th, somewhere, depending where the 15th falls. Typically if it falls on a weekend, I'll push it out to that Monday or Tuesday, depending on the month. So you always have at least 6 weeks to get your documents together and get it submitted. And if you're going to be late, just let me know that. We certainly can work with those dates, obviously, and help you out. But if I don't know, you're going to pick another email to remind you that this was due by the date that just passed. Again, on-site inspection is not typically part of a skip review. And again, licensed homes and standalone CPS programs are not eligible for skip reviews at this point. All right, biennials. Biennials were a big part of CPS, big part of residential back in the last version of HM 1001. But when we did the rewrite back in 19, we took those out and added back in the abbreviated skips. They just seem to work better for us and for the agencies as far as keeping on top of things. So again, although biennial reviews, again, these were 2-year certificates you would have received back then, are no longer an option. Home certified under HCM 1001. They are currently still in option and for certain standalone CPS programs, but not for all of them. To earn a biennial certification for CPS, you have to have 50 or fewer certified CPS slots at that site. Plus, you must have 2 or fewer deficiencies at the last annual inspection. So if you meet those 2 criteria, then you would do a biennial, which means basically you use the cert tool and you review every individual in your CPS program, and then keep that information on file with your information packet, and then give that to us the following year when we come out. So it's a little bit of a different process than we're doing right now, obviously for residential, but it's something that is still in the 507 until the next rewrite, and then we'll reevaluate at that point how well that's working for everyone. All right, any questions on those pieces?
So we do have a few questions.
Sure.
Let's see here. So has the digital record submission policy been changed at all since it has come out? Or is there a place I can find it to ensure I am working off the correct document?
It has not changed, I don't think, much at all since we first started, but there is a change coming in the next month or so. We're going to be adding some extra documents onto that. Because again, when we went from on-site reviews to the digital process, there was a huge issue with a lot of agencies getting us the number of documents that we would typically review in-house, but we've kind of worked around some of those for the most part. So we've been working the last 6 months here to kind of reevaluate the things that we're looking at and looking for. So there will be an updated list coming out in the next month or so. But if you don't have that now, and maybe after we're done here, Jay, if you could email that to Marissa, maybe.
Sure.
If there's a way that Marissa, if you could attach that to the PowerPoint that you send out to everyone, that way they would have the current one that we're using.
It is. And then I can also, there was the question about the slides too. I'm able to put documents on the CSNI website. So
Okay,
if you're
perfect.
comfortable with that, we can put both of those along with
Yeah.
the link to the YouTube.
Yeah,
Yeah.
that's great.
Yeah, and it is possible that they may have. So if I'm remembering this correctly, when COVID first happened and we went to digital, we had a small policy and we did expand it, I think, when we went back to doing in-person reviews. So you would want to check just to make sure that you do have the most current one on the
Yeah.
CSNI website. Because there was a slightly shorter one to start, I think.
Yeah, because for a few months we didn't go out. It was like 60 days or something we didn't do on-site. So it got to be a little funky as far as what we were looking for. I think after you're right, I think we started going back out again, doing the on-site portion, that we did update the tool at that point. That would have made sense.
So Jim has a question. After the initial review, I know the next one is in about 7 months, which is right, it's 9. Do you need to send in another application?
You do, yes. Yep, but when the annual review comes around, we need one for every year. So you submit an application on day one to open the home, and then you submit the next one at the end of your first year. So, say you came online today, you send us an application. Today, you'd come online on, March 30th. We give you a 90-day certificate based off of that application. We come out in 90 days, do our review, then you'll get another certificate that'll go from March 30th, and it'll end on the 28th of February. And that'll be your expiration date going forward. So we would need one like around that late December to have it 60 days prior to the May expiration date. And then it's every year after that. For the temp piece, once you sent in the app and the life safety, you get that 90-day certificate. You don't need to send us another application at the end of that 90 days, because we get those on occasion too. But you don't need to do that piece because you're already in the system. You haven't had your initial review yet, so there's no application needed at that point. But every annual time, you'll need to submit that to us going forward.
Great. Karen has a question. Can an abbreviated review be earned 2, 3, or 4 years in a row, or is there a limit?
Yes, the answer is no, there is a limit. The way it works is you can get an abbreviated or a skip every other year. You've got to have an annual inspection regardless every other year. So, if we do an annual this year and you earn a skip next year, or you have an abbreviated next year, regardless of your performance at that review, the following year, you're going to have another annual. You've got to get out there every other year to do a walkthrough of the home.
Perfect. Joe has a question. Hey, Joe. Can a program qualify for a skip review if they only had a deficiency or deficiencies that were the responsibility of the area agency and not the program or the vendor agency?
No, the way the rule doesn't specify or break it down to that level. It's strictly based on numbers of deficiencies. So if there's, whatever deficiency numbers you got, we have to base our next review, off of that number, regardless of who's responsible. And that certainly may be changed in the future because we're trying to figure out how this is, going to look down the road somewhere when, when vendors are able to kind of do like a direct bill stuff, and what the area agency's, procedure will be at that point around things. So I think there'll definitely be changes down the road and how we look at those things, because, because right, there are, there's vendors out there that get deficiencies that they have zero control over. So it's one of those things that we kind of struggle with. How do we handle it better? Because we have to account for them somewhere, but we don't certify, at this point, we don't certify like service coordination as a separate service. So I know there's a lot of discussion going on in the state right now about how that kind of looks in the future. So that's it, to be determined, I guess. But right now, we have to base it off of whatever deficiencies there are, regardless of who had to do the POC for it.
Yeah, and I think, depending if that's the only situation, if that's the only issue and the rest of the certification looks fantastic, the reviewer can also choose to just write a concern over that issue so that you get your skip a year. So
certainly,
that's certainly a possibility. You can ask the reviewer if they're willing to do that if they don't offer it. Maybe. I know I've done it several times for people.
Yeah, and I have no problem with that at all. Because again, we having us go back out to the house again the following year, or after you do another full review when the stuff you did this year was perfect. I
Exactly.
appreciate that being frustrating. So yeah, we can definitely work with that, no doubt.
Okay.
And I think concerns are a great idea to fill that void.
Carol Ann has a question. Hey, Carol Ann, is well water testing still every 5 years for certification?
Oh,
6 now.
I want to say it's 6, isn't it? I think we
Yeah.
gave people another year last time for whatever reason. Yeah, I believe it's 6 now.
And Charles has a question. Hi, Charles. Can a residential home be located anywhere in any neighborhood as long as the area is zoned residential?
Yeah, I mean, as long as it's a residential neighborhood and it's, where other people are living, it's got to be like an integrated neighborhood type of thing. We don't want people living, within like, an industrial park or something, where there's no other housing. But as long as it's in a residential neighborhood, I mean, there's no real limit where they can live. No.
Yeah. I mean, there used to be a regulation that governed this, but it got taken out a few years ago, so it doesn't apply anymore. But they used to have to be in areas where other family housing was located, I believe was the old language.
Yeah. And then we go up north north of the notch there, and the houses are 10 miles apart,
Yeah.
They don't see a neighbor forever. So kind of rethink that a little bit. Forget where we're living sometimes, A lot of variation.
The anonymous attendee had another question. Will the remote review continue, or we plan to go back to reviewing everything in the home at some point?
Right now, the plan is to continue as we are, to do the digital piece and then do the walkthrough. Again, being in the homes for hours on end didn't really benefit anyone for the most part. Typically, it was, my surveyor, the home provider, and the agency rep just sitting there for that period of time. So, we very rarely even get to see the individuals, because typically they were out at a program or at work or doing other things during the day. So, we really weren't getting any benefit to anyone by sitting there doing it. Now we're able to, have everyone hopefully better utilizing their time to get things done in a more efficient manner.
We have a few quick questions that we can probably get through relatively fast. So is Sitter water required to be testing? And that's no, we don't test that.
Nope.
They test it on their own.
We assume.
And then someone would like to explain the difference between a concern, and I believe they mean a concern and a deficiency. That's not the question that got written out, but I think it's a typo.
Okay. Yeah, I mean, concerns usually things that, sort of on the edge. They either don't meet a rule that, exists, or it's one of those fine lines where it maybe didn't quite meet the rule, but maybe meant part of the intent or something. So typically the things that are not rule related, but they certainly can be. I mean, as Jay mentioned, we could choose to just write a concern in certain situations instead of a deficiency if we felt that was appropriate based on that situation. The surveyors are kind of allowed to make that call in the field, and when they have questions, they call me and we'll discuss it, or they'll call each other and review what the situation was and how to proceed in those situations. Because and when dealing with people and stuff, there's no black and white reviews. Everyone's different from the next as far as who we're dealing with and what the individual situation is and kind of what's going on in that home at that point. So there's definitely a lot of variation as far as how we make those decisions.
Okay, great. Can you please clarify if you need to send 3 months of controlled medication logs with a digital review, even when a walkthrough is scheduled? We have received different communication and expectations. Should be pretty simple. Yes.
Yeah. Right now it's on the list because it gives them a chance to, because otherwise we have to sit there, I think, at the on-site and then go through, several months worth. So if we can see some of that before we get there, we can just go and verify the current month and the actual count and go from there.
Yeah. And quite honestly, after reviewing these logs for as long as I have, it is significantly easier to review these things in your own house over an electronic version that you can expand and do anything you need to manipulate to look at things better. It's just much easier for us.
Yeah, I agree.
I'm getting old, so maybe it's just my eyesight.
I hear you. Right there.
Carolyn just had another question about radon testing. Is that being considered for certification? Not as far as I've heard.
Right now, it's not on our radar, but there's been a few things recently that are not on our radar that we have to consider. So, so right now it is not. I know we've discussed a little bit and I've heard stories about it being available as an option down the road. So, yeah, that's kind of where we are at right now. There's really nothing on the table right now for it.
Okay. And then one last question from Charles. Hi, Charles. Are mobile homes okay as long as they pass inspections and a life safety report?
Yeah. As long as they can meet the life safety requirements and, have the exits, windows, et cetera, that, any other home would have, then, yeah. And, interconnected smoke detectors, et cetera, it's going to meet all the same requirements as any other community residence. So as long as it meets those basic things, certainly we have, a number of mobile homes out there right now that we certify.
Okay, great. And then there's another request to sort of go over the lock and key rule, but we'll be getting to that in a little while, correct?
Yes.
Okay, that is all the questions right now.
All right. Let's go on to the next piece here. All right. So did you want to jump in and do some of the information?
Yeah, I can certainly take over from here. You've done a lot of talking, Peter. Hi, everybody, it's Jay. So I'm going to quickly go through the documents and the rest of the slides that we have here. And then we'll get to the questions next time we see the question slide. So we're going to quickly go over what's called the residential information packet. So this document is completed as part of all residential certification inspections, initial, annual, abbreviated, and skip. And I think you'll have to forward the slides for me, Peter.
Sure. No
The
problem.
following information is included in the packet. So it's got the individual medication information, the staff and home provider information regarding background checks, insurances, etc., staff and home provider training dates, residents information with regard to smoke detectors, furnace inspections, well water tests, dates, etc., and fire evacuation drills going back to when the home opened for initial reviews or back to the last certification inspection for annual, abbreviated, and skip inspections. And then the next section is the CPS information packet. It looks very similar to the residential information packet, and it's completed as part of all CPS certification inspections, individual, annual, and biennial. The following information is included in the CPS information packet, same as the other packet, except for it doesn't have quite as many trainings. It's got the individual medication information, the staff and home provider information regarding background checks, insurance, etc., staff and home provider training dates, and fire drill information should also be attached to this packet if the CPS site has an approved life safety report and it uses the site for activities. So if your community-based services are based out of that site and you're doing fire drills, please attach a copy of those fire drill reports for us. So on the day of certification, please ensure that the requested documents have been submitted to the surveyor by the agreed upon day and time. If a walkthrough is being completed as part of the review, the surveyor will need to go to the individual's bedroom, the basement, the attic, and the other common areas of the home. And that includes an empty bedroom that is certified. So if it's an empty certified bedroom, we'll also need to review that room. The smoke detectors will be tested during the majority of the walkthroughs. We primarily only do not set off the smoke alarms if it's on a fire alarm panel that is serviced annually.
Correct.
The surveyor will verify the count for any controlled medications in the home. We usually have either the provider or the program manager, whoever's there and medication authorized for that individual to do the count for us. And then we'll watch them do the count and verify the count on the log. We may request to review the medication orders for the individuals. In fact, I've been doing this quite a bit lately. I've been pulling the med book and actually reviewing the orders and the current log. This on-site portion of the review typically takes between 15 and 30 minutes. And even reviewing the med logs, I don't think I've been in a home more than 45 minutes for an especially tough review where the med stuff was a little bit difficult to get through. So it's still pretty quick. Shouldn't take any longer than 30 minutes probably.
Okay.
Unless we hit a roadblock or something.
Where are those?
So this is a list of documents that are required to be submitted for the review. And you can see this on the expanded digital record submission policy, which we'll send out later on. So it's the residential information packet, the background checks, which include DMV, criminal record check, and BEAS checks, the 5-day visit form from the nurse and service coordinator, the fire safety assessments and fire drills. Right now, we are just asking for the fire safety assessments for initial reviews. That may change coming up in the future, but right now it's just for initial reviews. Fire drills are required for all reviews. The emergency face sheet for all individuals served. Monthly progress notes for the last, I believe it's 6 months in the current policy. That is probably going to be shortened. I'm sure there's a large cheer going up. Everyone's happy about that. The safety assessment and plan, if applicable, if an individual has unsupervised time. And this includes, I'm just saying this because I've run into it frequently recently, any unsupervised time in a car, even if it's 5 minutes, requires a safety assessment and plan. The HRC approval for the behavior plan, and you may get a request for the plan itself if needed, but we're really just looking right now at the approval page. So that's usually the first 2 pages of the area agency cover sheet there. Annual health assessments, annual diet orders if applicable, the HRST monthly data tracker, self-administration assessments, 3 months of controlled medication logs and medication counts, And the list of documents will be increasing in the upcoming months with advance notice and updated forms will be sent out. And so what we did was we added some stuff in, but we took some stuff away to not beat people up. So that's why we're going to be having you submit less monthly progress notes, because we're going to have you submit more of some other things. But we tried to make it a little bit of a balancing act because you're already submitting quite a bit already. So as far as CPS document submission, specific to the initial annual and biennial reviews, the documents include the CPS information packet, the background checks, which include DMV, BEAS, and criminal record check, fire drills for the past year. For each individual whose record was chosen, please submit the following: the current schedule, the progress notes, and the health assessments. And this list of documents will definitely be increased in the upcoming months with advance notice and updated forms sent out at this point. We've been very light on the CPS stuff, so we need to definitely get into those records a little bit deeper. Any questions? It looks like there's just one hanging out there.
Let's see, two.
Is the individual self-medicating, is a med log still required? So no.
Nope.
And define health assessments. Should I read I can read the rule if they want. So it's a thorough and periodic review of the individual's current health status is the, and then any prospective issues that they may have in the future. So it has to be a thorough examination. Are we still, where are we at with telehealth right now, Peter?
I think we're still seeing them. We're not seeing as many. We saw a lot that first year of COVID, but they seem to be very few and far between now. I mean, if we get a current one today and their previous one was the telehealth, I think we would just kind of call it even and go forward. If telehealth is still happening, we just want to kind of talk about why that happened in that situation. You know, was it the doctor's preference to do it that way? Was the individual, the guardian, preferring to do it that way? So I think those are being looked at kind of on a case-by-case basis.
Okay. And then there's just a follow-up question. So the person means, are we discussing the after visit summaries for the physical? And yeah, if it's thorough, you know, it depends on the provider. Some people give great after visit summaries and some don't. So just make sure that the documentation you're getting from the doctor's office is thorough and complete and shows that they have had an exam. If it doesn't, you might just want to ask from the notes from the appointment.
Makes sense.
And so Maggie had a question for residential. Are the background checks required if the program has been open for a few years, or is it only for new employees?
Yeah, we just typically want to see the new employees for ongoing reviews. Like we want to see everything obviously on day one when the home opens. But when we're doing renewals, we typically only want to see people who are new as far as staff goes. We don't need to see, you know, someone's current check from, you know, 2019 today because we've already seen it initially. So if you're still working on the same background check, which I assume that folks are, because there's no requirement to do it more frequently, then once we've seen it, we've seen it. So just the new stuff typically is required.
Yeah, and just make sure on this that, you know, if a staff has been hired for a long time, but they transfer from another program that wasn't certified, say a PDMS program, you know, no reviewer has ever seen those background checks. So you may get asked for that if the reviewer doesn't recognize the name, possibly.
Yep.
But otherwise, yeah, I don't think so. So Joe had a question. Is it accurate that the only background checks need to be submitted for staff hired in the year since the last certification review? So I think that tags up on the one we just answered. Primarily,
Yeah.
yes. Maybe not if someone transferred in or we don't recognize the name. I mean, the reviewer can always ask for any document that they want. So if they request it, they're allowed to have it, whether or not our policy says it or not. But typically we wouldn't ask for something if if a reviewer has already reviewed it.
Correct.
So Jen had a question. Hey, Jen, can you clarify that on the residential packet that asks for the fire drills, which should be documented on the last page of the fire grid? Okay. So can they use I see. So I think this is essentially, I've had this question before where, you know, can they fill out the grid or can they send their own grid or use their own fire drill forms instead of sort of reinventing the wheel on that grid?
Yeah.
I've seen it both ways. I allow some agencies to send me their drills who don't want to do the grid, but I believe most reviewers want the grid completed. I kind of like getting the drill records because it gives you the full picture. And I think maybe
Right.
what we're talking about, maybe Jen, specific to that CSNI form that everyone's using that lists all the drills.
Right.
So they've already got that list. So reinventing the wheel, I can sort of see as being a little bit cumbersome, but most reviewers would like to see that, I'm pretty sure.
Yeah, with the handwritten ones, sometimes they're hard to read, but sometimes people handwrite the ones that we get anyway from the pre-cert packet. So
Yes.
it doesn't always like solve what the initial reasoning was for getting those things, I think. So
And this is a great question that just came through. Wow, it's a really relevant question. When your nurse trainer leaves you and you're struggling to find a replacement as quick as possible, what happens?
yeah, I mean, they really need to work with their agency, let them know what's going on, and then,
Reach out to Tiffany
reach out
ASAP.
to Tiffany, let her know at least what's going on, because maybe she has, she can send something out to the other nurses to see if anyone wanted to pick up another, agency, at least temporarily. But yeah, it's really important to reach out immediately to their agency and to others to make sure that we're all aware of it, and so that we're all trying to talk about the same thing and help you get it resolved. But there's only so much, resources we would have would be to recommend you talk to other nurse trainers, obviously, because, we don't supply them, nor does BDS. So it'd be important for them to, reach out, and, we can try to give you some advice and kind of way to head.
Great. Susan had a question. Hi, Susan. Are you going to start checking to make sure the BES checks are being completed every 5 years? I think that's just been more of a logistical issue during COVID more than anything else.
Yeah. Yeah, I think on the packet that we're developing, the revisions that I think it's one of the revisions that we put on there was the initial date for the
Yep.
registry check, and then, the most current one after that.
Yeah.
So we
Yeah.
wouldn't need, say someone's been down the road somewhere, when they've been here 10 years, we're not gonna be looking for the one in between. We just wanna kind of make sure they're being done every 5 years. So it's always gonna kind of be the previous and current type of thing.
Okay. And then one last question from Maggie. Hi, Maggie. If an employee leaves within the CERT year, are we required to still list their information on the CERT packet? Yes.
Yes.
Yep, just for that certification cycle. Once they've been gone for the certification cycle, you can omit them from the future packets.
Correct.
And that's it for all the questions, right? Although I think some came through in the chat. I believe Min had a question in the chat, and I think it was around, so what happens when an individual keeps refusing to get out during a fire drill? So that, I think, requires a fire safety plan and a team meeting, probably.
Mhm. Yeah.
And that's it. That's all the questions right there.
Okay. Good deal. Okay. There we go.
Okay, so respond. Oh, you want to do this, Peter? You want me to do it? It's up to you.
No, go ahead, Jay. No, you're fine.
Responding to deficiencies and concerns. So all plans of corrections, POCs, are due within 21 days of the receipt of the results. The receipt of the results. The POC must include how the program corrected or intends to correct the issue, the date by which it will be corrected, how the program intends to prevent this issue from being repeated. And that's really important, because I've seen some repeat deficiencies in a lot of different programs lately. So that's a super important part. You don't want to be getting repeat deficiencies. And please submit the entire plan of correction when it is complete. Do not send it in piecemeal. We need the entire document as one, and any supporting documentation with it.
With the amount of paperwork that we get, even online, it's just stuff can usually get lost if it doesn't come in together. We can get it separated in our computers and not have it easily accessible. So
absolutely. I lose stuff even when it all comes in together. So, so for future reviews, after your initial certification review, you'll receive another review at the end of your first year. For example, if the home or CPS site comes online on 3/30/22, our initial visit will happen around late June or early July of that year. And your first annual, I got a pop up here that just came in the middle of my slide. I cannot read my slide. This pop-up won't go away. There we go. Your first annual certification inspection will be scheduled around late February, as your certificate expiration will be 2/28/23. The certificate for this home will expire on the last day of February going forward. You get your extra day on the leap year. Yes, you do. Once you've completed your first 2 reviews, future reviews will happen as follows. So for 1 to 3 person homes with 3 or fewer deficiencies, Those homes are eligible for an abbreviated review without a site visit. So remember, this is after having an annual review. So 1 to 3 person homes with 0 deficiencies are eligible for the SCIP certification process, which Peter described earlier. And CPS programs with 50 individuals that receive 2 deficiencies, with less than 50 individuals that receive 2 deficiencies or less are eligible for a biennial review. This requires the agency to complete an internal certification review after the 1-year mark of all individuals in the program and to maintain that documentation until the next certification review by our office. We do not recommend that CPS programs do biennial reviews on their own. It is a tremendous amount of work for your agency. And I can't think of an agency that's done one successfully off the top of my head.
Yeah.
So, I mean, I'm sure there's one out there that I'm probably forgetting about, but it's really, it's a lot of work because you have to review every single individual. When we come out, we just review a percentage. So it's a lot more work. And all other programs are reviewed annually regardless of performance. So renewal annual certifications, you must submit a renewal application at least 60 days prior to your expiration date. And it's 120 days for your licensure application if you have 4 or more beds. You will always have 2 years during your first year of operation. You're going to have the review at the temporary review after 3 months-ish, and then you'll have one at the end of the year. So again, future reviews will depend on the size of the home or CPS site plus the review results from the previous review. So review of licensed homes. So review by HFA staff is similar to any other residential inspection, although there are some additional requirements. A life safety code inspector will conduct a random unannounced inspection of a licensed home. So he just comes to the home, he or she just comes to the home and they're required to be let in that day and you're required to show them around and they just go through the entire physical part of your residence. Failure to comply could potentially lead to having the oversight being fined or having their license revoked. So this is the thing that I don't think most people here are going to be familiar with. So under HEP 814, there are fines available for licensed homes, and they can be as much as $2,500 a day. So it's very, very significant. So if you want to be licensed, just be aware of that fact that there is that stipulation in the licensing rule that you can be fined, and you can be fined for as little as not completing your POC or as not completing your POC in time or not following your plan of correction. So if you're going to be licensed, I highly recommend that you go ahead and take a look at HEP 14 before you do so. And then this is the additional tool for licensed homes. So what it does is I can't actually blow mine up. So it talks about rights and responsibilities and a chain of command. And they're all pretty much licensed homes will have postings that deal with each one of these issues. And you can see the 4th box down talks about, are these things posted? And they go through there. And it talks about having solid waste disposal and a whole bunch of other things, tight fitting screens and what each room has to have. So if you have a licensed home, you're probably already aware of this form, but you might just want to review it and make sure you're in compliance with those things on there. The reviewer will also do this when they do their site visit. So there's 2 categories of waivers depending on the rules you're requesting to follow. Requesting to waive as follows. So BDS waivers are specific to the HEM rules such as 1001, 507, and 1201. These waivers requests are submitted to BDS for review and approval. HFA waivers are specific to the HEP rules, which in our unit is HEP 814. This rule only applies to those homes that are licensed and have 4 or more individuals living there. Both BDS and HFA have their own waiver request form. So you don't want to send the BDS form to us or the HFA form to them. They won't be able to process it. So these are the 2 waiver request applications. The one on the left is the BDS application. The one on the right is the HFA application. So you're going to be going through those, entering program names and all the information you need to in there. If you have any questions about that form, please reach out to your area agency directly to fill out that form with them, because they're going to have to approve it before it gets sent to BDS or HFA. So this is the certification assessment survey. So unfortunately, you're probably not seeing this as often as you used to. I used to give this out literally at every single inspection I went to. I don't carry paper with me, and I don't think any of the other reviewers do either. But you can, I believe that this is on our website, and I believe you can access it at any time. And if you ever want a copy of this, just please reach out to Peter or I, and we can just send you a copy of it. You can fill it out digitally if you'd like and submit it to Peter.
Yeah.
And it's anonymous if you want to keep it anonymous. It's up to you. We allow this, you can certainly send it to Peter anonymously, or you can identify yourself, whatever you want. So this letter is a closure letter. So if an individual is moving out of a residence, or you're closing the home for whatever reason, you want to fill this out and make sure you submit it to us by the closing date. You can submit it after the closure date if you want, but it's most helpful if we get it on the day of closure or very soon thereafter. Related information. So unannounced inspections can absolutely happen. If you've had a significant health and safety violation at the previous inspection, or there were any concerns about the upkeep of the home or the care of the individual, you could certainly get an unannounced inspection. Scheduling or canceling inspections. So if you or anyone in the home where we're going to be going to is sick, please notify us, especially with COVID. This has become even more important. So we need to be notified if anyone in the home is sick. That also goes for if the home has bed bugs or any other sort of issue that could be transmitted, because we're not just going to this house, we're probably going to another house after this and maybe another house after that. So we don't want to continue the issue. The same goes for if you need to cancel an inspection due to weather, snow, storms, that sort of things. Please just let us know. We're more than happy to move things around if we're able to. And then Pete, I'll let you do the appeals and formal dispute resolution. You're the expert on that.
So if there's the deficiencies that you get and you feel that you met the rule in some way, not the way that we typically see, but there are more than one way to reach certain rules, obviously. So if that's the case, or if you find documentation that you shouldn't have received that deficiency, then you need to send it to me. So you request to have this deficiency removed, and here's the reasons why. Just submit as much documentation as you can to back up your appeal or informal dispute resolution, and then we can take a look at that. And I review them here in the office, with my supervisor if need be, and we make decisions based off of what the rule says and how this was played out. So those who need to come in, around the same time the POC goes in for the others, typically they come in together. The POC would have the 3 deficiencies or whatever, and if someone were to appeal one, they would write that we respectfully request to appeal this deficiency based on the following information. So they would, write out kind of what their reasoning was for submitting the document, and then if they could submit other supporting documents to go with whatever it is they're trying to dispute, that is really helpful. It helps us make a better decision. So.
All right, great.
So
We have about 7 questions. So does it have to say annual physical on the annual health exam? No, it could say annual health exam, or it should say somewhere on it though, like, MWV, like, Medicare wellness exam or visit or something like that. Like, it should say somewhere on there that it was a full exam.
Yes.
But it doesn't need to say annual physical. Those words are not required.
No, if they're reviewing like some, a person's systems and so forth, that they have that information on there, we could use that document as a potential, document to fill that void.
Great. And then, so Mary's got a question. Hey, Mary, are you still okay with the POC from the vendor and the area agency coming separately?
I think right now, yeah. I mean, I think that it's not always optimal for us because the way it comes in sometimes, but I think for what we have available to us, that's probably not the best. Better off just going with what we have right now, I think, having them be separate if they need to be that way.
Yeah. And sorry, Peter, go ahead.
What are you seeing, Jay, over in that region as far as what you're getting back to POC? You see so many more than I do.
I primarily get separate emails. I don't know what's going on, but I don't typically get the area agency POC from the vendor. I typically get it directly from the area agency.
Sure.
Yeah. And then an anonymous attendee also tagged up on this. So it says if the AA is responsible for the POC, sometimes that is sent directly to your office, essentially sending 2 POCs. That's okay. That's okay.
Yeah.
If we get 2 POCs, I can live with. It's better than not getting one. You know, so we can handle that. That's okay. What happens if you get the same deficiency 2 years in a row?
Yeah, I mean, typically we would cite the deficiency, but then we're going to cite the deficiency for not following whatever the plan of correction was that was submitted. So you may get 2. And you get, going to create extra deficiencies for you. But if it's in the license home, it potentially leads to a warning letter and potential fines if you're having repeat deficiencies in the licensed environment. So it's a little bit different depending on what your setting is. And if there are repeat deficiencies, depending on what it is, and maybe pop-in reviews that happen after that, just to see how the issue is being addressed, if they're sticking to whatever the plan was for that specific issue.
Yeah, and then the deficiency that gets cited is just an ugly deficiency because it's called a denial of certification deficiency. So, technically we have the ability to deny the certificate based on something like that. We don't typically do that. But it is there. So that's where that lands. So Catherine had a question. Hi, Kathy. Do you recommend, or hey, Katie, do you recommend if we have a document in the POC that we resubmit with all documents attached? Yeah, if we forget a document in the POC that we resubmit with all documents attached, yeah, that would be great. That'd be very helpful. You think so too, Peter?
Yeah, I agree. Yeah, having a separate document then floating around can easily get lost.
Is there any thought in the future to break out area agency deficiencies and vendor deficiencies? Well, we do kind of do that now, actually.
Yeah, it's just hard to, do it in a permanent way so that when the report goes out, like if we do a report, say for one of the vendors, it's going to show all the deficiencies. So having to pull things out of there is what we're trying to figure out down the road somewhere, so that, because the area agencies, if you're a vendor, the area agencies are not certified separately. So it's hard to get at those issues the way our system currently is set up. So it's something that we definitely need to talk about here and try to figure out a better way to do that at some point down the road.
And Renu had a question. Do you need to maintain documentation of the skip year for the next full year?
No.
Sort of like the biennial packet, I guess.
Yeah, no, we wouldn't look for it, as long as you've, submitted the packet. If we, and everything is still good when we go out for the annual the next year, then you'd be fine.
And I think, well, I don't know, are we saving those packets, Peter? I know I was uploading them to MLO for a while, but I don't know that we
Yeah, everything that they send me for the skips goes into our database. So the entire document's up there.
So a few questions from anonymous attendee. When the state asks one vendor to close a home for serious issues, how does that same home open up again with another vendor in the same year if there were issues? That's an excellent question.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I mean, we have to handle our recertification as a separate home. It's all brand new again when they reopen. We had a situation a couple of years ago where something similar happened, and we had met with our attorneys about it and tried to figure out what we can do. And basically, we were told that because it's a new application with a new situation, you need to handle every situation separately, and just have in the back of your mind what the issues were and try to, address those early on. So, hopefully, and we hope that, a vendor or an agency opens a home and that provider says they've been opened in the past, that the agency would call the other one to try to get some kind of a, response as to how things went. But I know it's hard to do that and get real information sometimes, trying to get that kind of recommendation or not. So.
Yeah, and that house would definitely get extra scrutiny from us, especially if we were familiar with it before and we had it. We don't close too many homes ourselves. We usually ask the agency to close it. So we would certainly give that home a lot of extra scrutiny if that happened.
Correct.
So I've always followed what DHH cover sheet has said, which was that the AA sends it to the vendor to send to the cell. Is that not accurate anymore? Oh, I think this is around not the emergencies, but the waiver, right? Because it says, then the waiver requested that the area agency has to submit it to the state or something like that, right? With the area.
Something like that, yeah. Let's see.
The AA sends it to the vendor to send it to the surveyor.
They could be talking about POC possibly too. Like I think there were some situations where
maybe that's right,
to submit that to the vendor, so it all came in as one package, but that hasn't always played out, obviously. We get it.
Yeah, it's so random how we get this stuff. There's really just no, I mean, even though the cover sheet might say something that is not what people follow, unfortunately. How often do fire safety plans need to be approved by the guardian? I think the requirement in the rule is only initially, but I would say you should, if it doesn't, because fire safety plans shouldn't need to last for very long. You know, the plan's supposed to remedy the issue. So if it's still in effect or at the end of a year, I would say it needs to be reviewed again by the guardian.
Yeah. See, there's still a need for it. You know, if they did it, 9 months ago or something, and we're coming out soon, they redo it now, and the person said, under 3-minute fire drills for the entire period, then, we could look at walking away at that point and starting from scratch.
Yeah, and Donna said that, if they think that a home should be revisited unannounced by a certifier due to past deficiency that were noted, would we ask the same certifier to go out, or ask Peter that we would like the home inspected again, and would he send out another surveyor? So I think it could go either way. I mean, if you would like another certifier to see the home, I think Peter would absolutely account for the issue.
Done that a number of occasions for sure. So yeah.
Knowing Peter, he would go out himself, I'm guessing.
I've done that numerous times.
Now, if you're asking for somebody besides Peter to go out, we have a whole different issue. So if you take an individual to the ER and all their symptoms, and all their systems examinations, can that be submitted as an annual physical exam? I would say no. I mean, it's an ER visit. I suppose if it's the only documentation you had, maybe we could accept it if it looked thorough enough, but I would try to stray away from that.
Yeah, because if they're in the ER, it's for, a very specific reason. So they may not be looking at certain things because they're looking at whatever the issue is today.
Now, if they got admitted, that's a different, if they got admitted into that ER visit, that I'm sure they would get a physical right then, probably.
Yeah, and they'd have like kind of a discharge summary we could work off of. So yeah.
And then someone wants to know if we share the CERT scores by vendor. So like the old grid you used to do that showed how people's performance did by agency.
Right. Yeah, well, we share them with BDS, obviously. And, we'll share yours with you. I can't share other vendors' situation with other vendors type of thing. So everything.
We're very vague about that sort of stuff.
I can give you kind of rough numbers around the state as far as deficiencies go, but we can't, I can't divulge other agencies' documentation or information around their results.
The next question looks like it's around someone's getting cited because their SIS it was expired prior to Appendix K, but they can't get an SIS scheduled, but the program continues to be cited. So I'd consider an appeal in that circumstance to Peter, and then he can.
Yeah, because the stuff in Appendix K, I think that kind of pushes us out, a ways now, just because, there are issues getting people scheduled. So yeah, just send those directly to me and we can look at them to see what the situation is for that individual. Just submit any other supporting documents you have around attempts to schedule it and things like that. Because, there's been a bunch of attempts made, and then we give you a deficiency for it. It doesn't really serve a whole lot of purpose because you're doing what you can to get it done. But if people aren't available, then definitely, we just need documentation to kind of back it up. So yeah, just send those to me on a case-by-case basis.
Shelley has a question about, can the list of questions and answers be provided with the PowerPoint once it's sent? Many questions have been asked that are important and not part of the presentation. So I think the only way you're going to be able to access the answers to the questions that are being asked right now is through watching the video and listening to the audio. I don't think any of this will be transcribed, but I'm not sure about that.
Yeah, be my understanding.
Yeah, and if there are questions after, if there's people want to continue asking any questions, are either of you open to just sort of putting together maybe a Q&A sheet that could also be shared out with the whole group?
Yeah, definitely. If people have other questions, definitely they could share that stuff with you, whatever, or they could, probably be best if they got sent to you initially. That way, otherwise we'd be getting different emails from different agencies. They wouldn't all be in one place.
Right.
So if there's a place they could submit stuff to an email there somehow, and then we could put everything onto one page and respond to it, that'd be great.
Yeah. Okay. So I'll send out an email. I'm thinking maybe like a SurveyMonkey type format, and any additional questions can be shared with you and posted.
Yeah, that'd be great.
Great. So there's just four last questions here, and hope we can get these in the last 4 minutes we have. So is there a list of programs, homes that have been closed due to issues, sort of like a Lori list of homes? No, there are not.
No, the CR stuff is all private. Like, we get calls all the time from, people in the community that want to know about this home or that home, or how many people live in my neighborhood. And we can't release any of that stuff. The only information we can release to them is if it's a licensed home. That information is, some of the information is public and it's online, and people can go and access that if they choose to. But for the typical CRs or 1 to 3 homes, none of that stuff is public information. Whether it's a private home or whether it's a vendor's aft home or something, it doesn't matter. They're all private.
So Tyler had a question. Hi, Tyler. So for annual exams, is there a minimum amount of information required for the exam to be acceptable for certification? Some individuals' insurance coverage issues have resulted in a physician, quote, not being able to touch, unquote, an individual for this exam. Would this situation result in insufficient information? So that sounds like a Medicare wellness exam to me.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, sometimes that's all we've been getting in certain situations. So it's not optimal. So we can certainly ask for more, but we don't always get it.
Yeah, it's hard to quantify that, Tyler. It's really on a case-by-case basis with the documentation we see. And then if we can determine that seems like enough for that specific individual, because a lot of it can depend on the individual's medical needs, how much we need to see. Someone has very minimal medical needs might have a much less documentation than someone with very significant medical needs. Then 2 last questions. So on the fire drill grid, at the end of the packet, we need to input the fire safety assessment. Is this the initial assessment date from the move-in or the most recent one done? Example, if they moved in 2010, are we using that date or the most recent? So the fire safety assessment is only required to be done initially and then revised whenever there is a change in the person's status. So if there's been no change in the person's status since they moved into the home, you should be using the same initial fire safety assessment date. If they've updated it, then you would use the new date. And you will never get a deficiency if you update the fire safety assessment every year. It's just that the requirement is initially. So if you want to update it every year and give us a new date every year, that's absolutely fine. It's just not required. And I love the last question might be my favorite question of the whole thing. Are we going over anything new that we need to know?
Yeah. And it's really not. I mean, this is all coming from the rule that was approved back in 2019. So it's, just that we have a lot of new people in the system right now.
Yeah.
I think that's kind of where a lot of this stuff came from, is that, we've been hearing stories for the last couple of years about new managers, people coming and going, and people who are in staff positions been moved out to managerial positions, may not know all the cert pieces, and then staff below them are brand new and not trained as far as certification requirements go. So no, it's definitely more of a refresher to kind of get people back up to speed and go over the basics. And then, if you have questions after today, though, if you have something that's specific that to your home or something, let JRI know those things. If it's questions that you think would be applicable to, a lot of situations with other people, definitely send those over towards Marissa so that she can put those into our document for us, and then we can answer those and for everyone to benefit from.
And it looks like we're just about out of time and we haven't gotten to any of the lock and key stuff. So maybe if they have any questions, they could email them to us and we can sort of, or, maybe it can be part of the Survey Monkey thing, possibly.
Yeah, I can absolutely add that. If
Okay.
there's specific questions in that way too, we can sort of direct them to the right person who can answer that.
Yeah, I mean, we cited that a couple of times in the past week. We started looking for this stuff last Thursday, I believe it was, and Thursday before. And, overall, things have not been horrible. We cited a couple of different times. What we're looking for, in regard to the bedroom, is that the person has a lockable door. It doesn't have to be locked, but it's supposed to be lockable. And if not, is the documentation to show why that's not the case. And that would require an addition or amendment to the service agreement, because that would be a modification. And then that would just have to be approved by the HRC committee, because it's, falls into 310 as far as that requirement goes. And the same thing with the outside door. The issue with the bedroom obviously is privacy. Can they have privacy in their room? And this is a way to get it. If, for the front door to the house, the idea is, primary reason that I understand is access. Can the person get in during the day? Because there have been situations over the years where I've gotten calls that, this individual, didn't feel well at 10 o'clock in the morning. They had an accident or something. They need to go home, but they can't get into their house because the home provider is at work and there's no way to get into the house. So I think this is trying to answer that dilemma to make sure that folks have a way to get in. Can the individual carry a key, or the staff carries a key with them? Is there a keypad on the house? Is there a key at the day program that they can grab quick and get back home if they have to? We're really looking for those pieces of access to make sure the person can access their home, whenever they need to do that. So, we're seeing a lot of variation, but again, it's only been in the first week or so here.
So people are asking a whole bunch of questions about the lock and key stuff, but I know you've got a hard out here at 3, Peter.
I do, yeah.
Do you want to, so will this weekend, I'm sorry to have to do this, everybody, but we're just going to have to wrap this up now. And if you have any lock and key questions besides what's been asked, we'll just have to put that in the Survey Monkey, or, obviously feel free to reach out to any reviewer directly. They're more than happy to answer questions too.
Does that work okay for you, Lori? Is there anything that you wanted to throw in while you're right there? I know we hope to have more time to go over this stuff, but we're quickly out of time here.
And I'm just going to quickly go through some questions that are in here. So if they have a lock, is there anything we need to do? No. If they've got it, then you're all set. It should probably be in the service agreement that they have it, though. They should document that in the service agreement.
Yeah, as far as the setting rule being embedded in 1001, I assume that maybe a piece of it will in the future, depending on what the issue is. I mean, the key issue is already in 310, so that's already
right
sitting there in place.
So Peter, I was just given I think you can hear me now. Is that correct?
I can. There you are.
Okay. I wasn't ignoring you. I
knew you weren't.
But
You never ignore me, Lori.
I don't think I can answer you. It's a perfect way to control Lori.
Yep.
I don't think we gave you permission until now.
So, I mean, I'm here. I know Peter has to jump off and you guys have to jump off, but BDS did answer some lock and key questions in some of our operational guidance as well. So, I think a critical question that just recently came out was if an individual isn't able to carry a key themselves, is it appropriate with their permission or guardian permission to carry a key to their home? And the answer is yes.
One question has come up quite a bit, Lori, recently, is whether or not a guardian or the individual themselves, if they don't have a guardian, can opt out if they don't want a lock on their bedroom door. But I think the answer was no, that it had to be there, or they have to have something documented, as well. I understand. Is that?
Yeah, the guardian can't opt out of that unless there's a specific reason why, which would be approved through the HRC. Why it shouldn't be done, but people don't have to use the lock if they choose not.
Correct.
Yeah.
Yeah, because we have a lot of houses out there now that have had locks for years, especially in like newer houses and newer apartments. It's already there. And people, so those places have been easy. It's been, more some of the older places or individuals that really have significant, medical needs. And I said that's what the modification process is for. You go in there, you can describe why a door, lock, or whatever is not appropriate for this individual. If the team agrees and then HRC agrees.
Yep,
that's
absolutely.
It.
You're
it
right.
Should be, that simple. I think sometimes it just kind of gets, more complicated than it should be. I think it's,
correct.
Pretty black and white overall. If we look at the, the privacy issue for the bedroom and the access issue for the front door, those seem to be the themes from what I understand as far as why we're doing this. So, all right. But yeah, if you have other questions, like we said, just include those. And then there's a lot of lock and key stuff, maybe Lori, you and I and Jay can get together and just review that stuff down the road.
Absolutely.
Something and come up with some, standard answers so that that information gets shared out there. Because if one person has a question, 10 of you have the same question. So that's kind of what we're looking at, is that, if it can help you all, that would be best case scenario.
And Ty just shot a question. And Ty, if you want to shoot me that question in email, I'd be happy to answer you after the training. It's a question about the lock and key stuff, but it's a basic one.
Okay, great.
All right. Well, thank you so much, everybody. I appreciate your time. And it sounds like everybody really found this helpful. So thank you, Jay and Peter and Lori. So
yeah,
I will send out an email with some way to collect your questions about the lock and key or any other existing questions that haven't been answered. And we will get this posted along with the slides and any other resources that have been requested throughout the meeting. So thank you very much, everybody. I appreciate it. And I hope you have a great afternoon.
Thanks, everybody.
Thanks, everyone.